Everybody joining me up next is Jon Johnson, the sports editor at the Dothan Eagle down here in Dothan, Alabama. And John, as always, I appreciate you taking the time.
Phillip, always glad to be on here with you.
I'm glad to have you on here. I know we're going to focus a lot on Alabama and Auburn here, two teams I know you've seen in person. But I just have to say this: it's kind of been an interesting college football season so far.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, except for Georgia, everybody seems to be about the same as far as the top tier teams. I thought, early on in the season, it was just Alabama and Georgia and everybody else. But Alabama's fallen off a little bit. I still think they're probably the second best team in the country, even though Cincinnati's in that spot. But Georgia's the only team that I can say, hey, this looks like the best team in the country. And then who knows, Saturday Florida might beat them. But that's kind of been the way it has been this season with the different teams for sure.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you, Georgia, and just the Georgia defense. I mean, just how they play. I think they're only giving up like 6.6 points per game. They're pretty much number one in everything, not just the SEC in the country. And it's just one of the things. I think Kentucky was the first team to score 2 touchdowns on them, and that was late when they did that. And they're coming off an off week. It's just whoever goes up against them, and we'll probably mention Alabama a little bit later, but it's going to be tough sledding with them because offensively, everybody says, well, Georgia's offense needs to do better. When are they going to play a team that's going to make them do better is my thing.
Yeah, where they got my attention was the Arkansas game because I thought Arkansas was really good going into that game. I think Arkansas is good, and I thought they would be able to make it a very competitive game because they had been running on people. Think of what they did to Texas A&M, what they did to Texas. I thought Arkansas would give them all they wanted, even though it was in Georgia. But that's the one that really opened my eyes. And, then they go to Auburn, and Auburn had chances to score on them, but, they couldn't get it in the end zone but the one time. And so, that's when, you feel like, hey, Georgia is for real, unless they just stumble, I feel like I really feel like they'll go undefeated through the SEC championship. I right now would put them as beating Alabama in the championship game, assuming Alabama's the one in there, which I feel like they will be. And then we'll see from there. But I do feel like Georgia right now, from top to bottom, is the best team in the country. The only thing you wonder about is your quarterback, who's been very good in Stetson Bennett, but will Daniels end up being the guy? I mean, they got 2 good quarterbacks, and you wonder if they end up putting Daniels in there, if that won't kind of, disrupt the flow a little bit. So I'm interested in seeing how that's handled when the time comes for that to happen, and it could be this Saturday.
Yeah, I kind of stubborn on that one. Stetson Bennett plays really well. I really like what he does when he rolls out of the pocket. He does something that you don't get with Daniels. But I look at JT Daniels as kind of like you see him as a guy that you can see playing on Sundays.
Yeah,
Bennett's not. I mean, he's not going to be playing on Sundays more than likely. And you just feel like, especially if they're getting a safe as Alabama in the SEC championship game or in the playoff against an Ohio State or Oklahoma, who's playing much better offensively once they change quarterbacks, you're going to need someone like Daniels that just has that potential to be a gunslinger type quarterback that can just put the ball in places that maybe Bennett just cannot do.
Yeah, I agree. And as well as Bennett's played, you hate to, not play him. But at some point, Daniels is sitting over there. He's gotten healthy, I believe. And you don't want to not use him too. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Kirby Smart uses both of those. And it could be who's got the hot hand, or if they ever do get behind, if they need a spark. So I kind of feel like we'll see both of them Saturday, with Bennett starting and Daniels coming in, and then we'll, go from there.
Yeah, we're probably going to see 4 quarterbacks played in Georgia with Florida with their 2 with Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. So if we see a 5th quarterback, then that's probably not a good sign.
Yeah, someone got hurt for sure.
Yeah, or it's just gotten that bad for somebody. Alabama, you've seen this team in person, and it feels like, look, I'm going to say this before I jump into any criticism of Alabama. They are really good, but we have an expectation of Nick Saban in Alabama, and coming off last year, and even the 2 years, they were really, really good. This team is really good, but it just seems like this team has shown more vulnerabilities than we've seen past Alabama teams, like the close calls against Florida. And that Tennessee game was close in the 4th quarter. I know they won 52-24, but that thing was close early in the 4th quarter. And then, of course, the loss to Texas A&M. So they've kind of have shown some vulnerabilities this year compared to past seasons.
Yeah, a couple of things I took away from the Tennessee game is those defensive linemen for Tennessee spent a lot of time in the backfield against Alabama. You don't see that very often on an Alabama team. That's a very veteran offensive line that Alabama has. And, Young was having to scramble around back there, and they got to him some. And that's something I really didn't expect to see a whole lot this year. And it's not like Tennessee's this great defense either. A few other things that kind of stand out is just the mistakes they are making that are uncharacteristic of Alabama teams. Whether it's running into the punter or just the silly penalties, things like that, and then just giving up the big play. I mean, Alabama's defense is very, very good. I don't think it's as good as we thought it would be coming into the season. But what surprised me is the big plays that teams are getting on them, and that's kind of who's scoring on them. Now, with all that said, as much depth as Alabama has, I think that's where things turn in the fourth quarter. I mean, like you said, and you're very true on this, Tennessee was in that game for 3 quarters, and then everything kind of changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way Alabama kind of operates. They kind of pound people down because they got so much depth than everyone else for the most part that, they can do that in the fourth quarter. Now, they were in a situation at Texas A&M they're not used to. They got behind, and Texas A&M answered everything that Alabama came back with. And that was one of those games where you're going to have one of those games. Alabama had it, and Texas A&M took advantage. If we look ahead of the next, the rest of the season for Alabama, I think they're all home games except at Auburn. I really don't think LSU is going to be giving them much trouble. I think the bye week came at a perfect time for Alabama to kind of just regroup a little bit, refreshing. I think Arkansas still could give them a battle. I'm still big on Arkansas, despite Auburn beating them the way they did at Arkansas. So I think that could be interesting. But until they go to Auburn, and as we all know, anything could happen in that one, even though Alabama will be should be the decisive favorite going into that one. Auburn's playing better, and that game could go. Obviously, I would say Alabama right now has got the advantage in that one, but crazy things happen at Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Yeah, that's been a house of horrors for Alabama. It's like whenever they play Auburn in Tuscaloosa, they usually blow them out under Saban, but when they go to Jordan-Hare, it's whatever can happen used to happen to them there.
And I think mentally it gets to Alabama a little bit. I think that's the one place, because it's happened several times, even of late, that when they go into that place, it's a little different for them. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think Jordan-Hare is probably one of the more underrated venues in college football, because we talk about Death Valley and you talk about the Swamp and, up there in Ohio State. There's several places we always talk about as being hard places to go into. Jordan-Hare is not an easy place to go into, especially when they're a good competitive team. And at night, Jordan-Hare can really come to life at night.
Yeah, it's a loud stadium. I think one of the loudest I've ever been in is actually at Florida, just because they're so close to the field. But I put Auburn right up there with all of them, including LSU, which is loud. But, that environment, especially the Iron Bowl, where everybody's keyed up for every play. I mean, it's just different. It's just different. And it is a factor. There's no doubt about it that the crowd plays a factor in that game.
Kind of keeping on Alabama, Bryce Young. It seemed like he is still, he had a good game. He threw for 371 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's 26 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the year. He's really having a good year. He's being put in the Heisman Trophy race, and that's another thing this year too as well. We're about to hit November. I mean, usually November someone separates, but usually going into November, it feels like there's 2 or 3 guys. We know, okay, they're the Heisman guy. It feels like this year's one of them years where we really don't know who is the Heisman favorite. It could be Matt Corral at Ole Miss, could be Bryce Young, could be Kenneth Walker at Michigan State. He's having a really good year. Kenny Pickett, Penn State. Names go on and on, but no, there's no set of guys that feels like they have separated. And like I said, Bryce Young is one of them guys that's kind of in that conversation.
Yeah, he's steady. I mean, he's when he gets back in the pocket, he's calm, cool, and collected for a guy who's just starting for the first year. I think we even saw against Tennessee that if he has to run, he can run it too. I mean, he's obviously a very pinpoint passer. Just runs the offense well. I mean, he really knows what he's doing back there, and the fact that he can scramble around a little bit is going to make him that much more dangerous. Now, I feel like Corral is probably the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. That's just my thought. I feel like he's the total package with what he does, passing the ball, and he's a rugged runner. I mean, he'll run over people, and he didn't have the people around him that Bryce Young has, as far as an offensive line, for example. So, right now, if I was voting, I would say Corral, but Young is definitely in the conversation, no doubt about it. And there's not a real person that you just say, yeah, there's no doubt this guy's going to get it. But I give Corral a little bit of an edge right now.
What I like about Bryce Young, especially, and I think sometimes we kind of forget with him, this is his first year starting.
Yeah.
He's a sophomore. I mean, he's not experienced. I guess last year, Matt Jones comes in 1 year, lights everything up, and Tua kind of showed up, and he was, super when he first started playing. But he's going to make mistakes because, this is his first year starting. A lot of things he's not seeing. And like when he went to Florida, that was a loud environment. A&M, another loud environment. But what I like about something he does, and a lot of younger quarterbacks that are athletic and that can run, first guy's not open, I'm going to go run. With him, he runs in behind the line of scrimmage, but he's running to let something happen down the field. It's like his mindset, first thing is to throw the ball, not, hey, I'm more athletic, I can just run this first down. Let me wait and see if somebody gets open.
Yeah, and have you ever seen really the pressure just get to him mentally? I mean, if it is, you don't see it on his face. I mean, he's got control of the offense, and just very impressive for someone like you said. His first year really played. He didn't play much at all last year, even with Jones, behind Jones, he didn't get many chances. So he's out there, and I know he had all the accolades coming in out of high school, but it's different when you put on the pads and get out there playing SEC football in front of everybody. And he's not this huge guy or anything like that either. It's not like he just physically is imposing and can do things because of that. He's just a very smart, crafty quarterback, and perfect for this offense because with the line that he does have, for the most part, he's going to have time to set up and look at first and secondary receivers and that kind of thing. And like I said, if he needs to scramble, he can scramble around pretty good back there as well.
Yeah, his demeanor never changes. Whether he throws an interception or a touchdown, it's the same demeanor, and I like that. He's got that poise and that confidence. So talking about control, the team that has a quarterback we all know is always in control, and that's Bo Nix. Focused, always having fun. But Bryan Harsin, year one, they're 5-2, 2-1, and people may laugh when I make this statement. You look at their schedule, they could still get to Atlanta. Everything's in front of them. If they win out, they get in. Will that happen? I don't know. But what's been your overall thoughts on year one under Bryan Harsin so far?
Yeah, I think it's been impressive. It's been solid. I felt like when they hired him, he reminds me a lot of maybe a mix of Pat Dye and Tommy Tuberville. He's just, as far as just no nonsense, I think he was the perfect type of guy that Auburn needed to replace Malzahn, who was just a different personality. I mean, they're just different. And I think Auburn needed something different. He's very organized. I think the players have bought into what he's trying to do. I think he's very disciplined. I think he's got good game plans. And basically, you just got to continue to build with, get better recruits in, because I think they're lagging in the talent department in some areas. Receiver, I'll just say that. I think Bo Nix has kind of gotten a bad rap throughout the season because the receivers aren't very good, to be quite honest with you. They've played better, especially at Arkansas, but so many dropped balls early in the season. And it wasn't Nix's fault. Now, he's not perfect either. But I feel like that the one area on that team that was really lacking was at the receiver spots. And that's just lack of talent more than anything else. If you look at from top to bottom, their offensive line has gotten better. And that seems to be a thing with Auburn, no matter who the coach is. Seems like early in the year, the offensive line always struggles. And by midseason, they start playing better. And by the end of the year, the offensive line is usually a strength. And I think this one is going to be the same way. Tank Bixby's kind of been underwhelming, but you never know when he may break out a little more and give the running game some juice. But I think they got the potential on offense to score enough points to win games. And I think the defense is, the question marks to me were the defensive line. It's gotten a little better. It's been okay. And let's remember, this defense has been playing all year basically without their best player. And Papa, who's I think going to be back Saturday night. I'm sure he won't be full speed, but it'd be good just to have him back on the field. And, secondary strong. I just think it's a solid Auburn football team. Now, can they run the table and beat Alabama and find themselves in the SEC championship game? Well, Harsin will preach that because, it's a possibility. Will they do that? No, I don't think so. But first year with Harsin, I think has been solid, and I think that's all Auburn people wanted was, get things back on track, have a solid season. They could win 8 games, they could win 9 games, and I think at worst it's a 7-5 team, and I think everybody probably would have taken that. But I think it's going to be better than that. And I think for a first year and out of the gates, I think he's done a good job.
Yeah, and I mean, Ole Miss is going to be tough this week. I mean, they're probably going to be have to get in a high scoring game with them. You beat them, but then A&M. Look, if I had to pick right now, I don't think they can. I think they can beat Ole Miss if they play the way they can play. A&M looks like they got it working now. It looks like it's the switches, flip with them. They're the team we thought it was going to be coming here. So that would be tough. But just say if they somehow can go to A&M and they've had success there, I think that's when the momentum will turn for this program going, because then you got Mississippi State, South Carolina, two teams you should beat. Then I think that's when people may be talking about more like, oh, can Auburn pull off the upset against Alabama? But A&M's kind of like the wild card game in there. The one I'm kind of leaning toward. I don't think they can beat A&M, but if they did, I think things change.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. Auburn and Ole Miss, you can flip a coin really if they were playing at Rip Hughes Stadium. But I think, playing at Jordan Hare, plus, I think Ole Miss they got to be wearing down a little bit. You look at the last 3 games they've played in a row. I mean, they had Arkansas. That was a tremendous game, back and forth, back and forth. They go to Tennessee, and they win that one. And you know what that environment was like. They come home and play LSU, who's really, besides Mississippi State, their big rival. That was a huge game for them. And now we got to go to Auburn and play Auburn. Now, as far as it's just on the field talent, I think Ole Miss has more than Auburn right now, especially offensively. But I don't know that, this is not a trap game by any means, but I think this is a game that will be tough for Ole Miss to win. I really do. And then, if Auburn does beat Ole Miss, and I would give them the edge, I think it will be very tough to win at Texas A&M. Somehow, if they win those two, you look at South Carolina and Mississippi State and think those are two you should win. I do think not a problem with South Carolina. Mississippi State, you never know what you're going to get with Mike Leach. So, you just don't know with him or that team. I mean, this is a huge game for both of these programs on Saturday night. If Ole Miss wins this one, they're in really good shape going down the stretch. But I think this will be a difficult one for them to win.
Yeah, because I think with Ole Miss, they can look at it like they win out, and then if Alabama slips up, then they still have a game with I believe they still got a game with A&M. I don't think Ole Miss has not played A&M yet, so those two still play each other. So it's kind of like Alabama's in the lead in the West, but there are some scenarios with these other teams like we just mentioned, Ole Miss, Auburn, and A&M, where if Alabama was to stumble again, they could get to Atlanta to play.
Yeah, and I think A&M comes to Ole Miss, so that can be another huge game for both of those. So there's some great football in the next couple of weeks to keep an eye on.
So before we close, I just want to ask. I know you covered games last year and you covered games this year. The difference. So how is it just being in these stadiums that are full capacity again? More feeling like college football versus last year.
Yeah, so much more fun for everybody, including people who are covering them. It's great to have the fans back in the stands. We're still masked up in the press boxes, but the atmosphere at college football is second to none. I mean, that's what makes it fun for all of us. And so, even on TV, you can see just everybody's so much more juiced up, it seems like this year, just because they couldn't last year. So it's been fun, and the games have been good. I mean, there's some really good college football being played this year, maybe because there is so much parity. I mean, even as good as Georgia is, they're beatable. And, it'll be interesting to watch Saturday. I mean, that'll probably be an interesting game. I mean, Florida, they're kind of on their heels, and a lot of people are down in them. And this is a big game for them as far as if they can kind of right the ship as it is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting this Saturday. Like I said, I'm going to call it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I know that's not what it's supposed to be called anymore. And then, of course,
That's what it's always been.
Yeah, like we'll find out in a couple of years, or maybe next year, whenever it happens, when Oklahoma and Texas come into the conference. So they keep changing the name of their rivalry too. I know, but they both are classics, and of course Auburn and Ole Miss. And John, this has been fun having you on the show. If listeners want to follow you online, where can they find you, and where can they check out the Dothan Eagle?
Yeah, a couple of things. Of course, DothanEagle.com is our website. You can always buy print edition at the newspaper racks if you're in Dothan. And You can follow me if you want to on Twitter. It's Eagle Sports Ed, and the Ed is for editor if it helps you remember it. But at Eagle Sports Ed, and I don't tweet maybe as much as a lot of folks do, but I do usually tweet out my work, and so if you want to give me a follow, that would be appreciated as well.
All right, sounds good. Everybody, give Jon and the Dothan Eagle a follow, and appreciate it, Jon. And I look forward to doing it again sometime down the road.
Anytime, Phillip. Appreciate it.